Fáilte, uicha hamna, darklings. I hope your pumpkins are carved and your cauldrons are stirred, because the spooky season is upon us. And ghouls, do I have a freak show for you. With the Halloween season upon us, my fellow creatures of the night, on this channel we plan to celebrate. So join me, darklings, as we creep on into our first ever Spooktober. Halloween, my least favorite holiday. Don't get me wrong, I will happily indulge in the sweet rewards of my children's efforts trick-or-treating. Only once they're tucked into bed, of course. And you mustn't forget to even out the candy between the two, so they won't suspect anything the next morning. But as for the cheaply made spiderwebs draped over all the letterboxes and eerie animatronics littering neighbourhooding yards, I just don't see the attraction. Even as a child, I adamantly refused to dress up and run the streets with my friends. Although, toilet papering Mr. Swanson's car on Halloween when we were 9 was the best thing I've ever done. On this Halloween, however, the neighbourhood had been suspiciously quiet. With the kids at a friend's place, my wife and I settled down to a nice hot drink and some quality time together, a rarity. We were not long getting into it when we heard a quiet knock at our front door. I'll admit, in our laziness and lack of costumes, and overall clothing at this point, we had left a large bowl of sweets on the steps for any ghosts, vampires, or fairies who may stop by. Surely the bowl couldn't be empty already. Leaving my wife in the living room, I dressed haphazardly as I answered the door. Our visitor couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, and she was alone, wearing a long nightgown and clutching a ragged brown teddy. I silently cursed her parents for picking this costume. Obviously, I've seen far too much TV. All she was missing now was the fake blood splatter and the bedraggled black hair. Gotta love a good jump scare. Getting down to our eye level, I pointed to our candy in the bowl and asked how she would carry it home.
I forgot how to get home,
she said quietly. Shifting her weight from one foot to the other, she seemed frightened, cold. I pulled one of my windbreakers from the coat rack inside and put it around her slight shoulders. "What's your name?" I asked her more gently.
Rose,
she whispered. "Honey, I'm just going to help Rose find her family," I called out to my wife before closing the front door behind us and leading Rose down the steps. "They must be here somewhere. Wouldn't they come out trick-or-treating with you?" She nodded and began walking with more purpose, a smile almost returning to her troubled face. As we walked further, Rose told me her parents' names and all about her dog, Sammy. After 2 or 3 blocks, she suddenly recognized her surroundings and pointed towards her house, a long tree-lined driveway in a gated community. As we approached the gate, she started to shrug off the jacket. "Keep it." I pushed it back into her hands. "I'll come by tomorrow and pick it up." She smiled and pressed her cold hand into mine. Then turning on her heel, she headed up the driveway into the trees. Satisfied with my good deed for the evening, I headed home. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of activity with band practice drop-offs and an appointment teleconference at work. I hadn't had the time to return for my jacket. When I finally had a few hours to spare, I drove over to the house and rang the intercom at the gate. "I'm just here to pick up my jacket. I lent it to Rose." The gate buzzed as it slowly crept open, and I pulled up to the front door. A pale, frowning young woman, who appeared to be in her early 40s, stood at the open door, watching my arrival. "Are you Sharon?" I asked, mentally crossing my fingers that I hadn't forgotten her name. "What do you want?" she interrupted my thoughts abruptly. I explained that I had lent Rose my jacket only a few days before and would like it back. Incredibly, Sharon seemed flushed with anger. "Do you think this is funny?" she blurted out, wringing her hands and stepping away from me. I was dumbfounded. Maybe she had misunderstood me. I slowly explained the story again, from the beginning. Rose appearing on my front step lost. Our conversation on the way home. The jacket. Sharon looked panicked as she listened, eventually prompting me to ask her if I'd said something wrong. She sighed softly. "Our daughter, Rose, she died 3 years ago in a car accident. I buried her on her 7th birthday." That's impossible," I stammered. How could I know all of this if I hadn't actually met her? Sharon motioned me to follow her into the house. Picking up a frame from the mantelpiece, she pushed it in front of me. "This is Rose," a family portrait. 2 young children, a boy and a girl, with rosy pink cheeks and smiles. There was no doubt in my mind that they were one and the same. Numbly, I followed Sharon upstairs to Rose's old bedroom. As the door creaked open, I scanned the flowery wallpaper and stuffed toys, and immediately caught sight of my jacket laying over the back of a chair. Chills pricked the back of my neck. Sharon also gasped softly beside me, realizing this must be the jacket I mentioned. We went our separate ways after that. I grimly noticed the makeshift stones for a small grave on the way to my car. Sammy carved into the mossy stone face. Happy Halloween to me. I've told my wife next year we're going to travel instead. Thanks for joining me for tonight's tale, Darklings. I am GoblinPrincessKyo, and if you enjoyed our encounter, then subscribe for more accounts and tales from the darker side of life. Ah, the broom fell. Company is coming. Sweet dreams. Meet you back at midnight.